All right, guys. So in this video, we are going to talk about how to solve absolute value equations. All right. I'm going to very briefly introduce some of the concepts. And so let's get started. Now, I want to review real quick what an absolute value is. In class today, I said that an absolute value can be defined pretty much as the distance of a number from zero. So let's say we have the absolute value of 2. The absolute value of 2 is basically asking me in a number line, how far is 2 from 0? Now, it really doesn't matter if I move from left to right or right to left. And it's good that you understand that, especially when we start talking about solving equations. So how far do I have to move, or how many units do I have to go to get from 2 to 0 or from 0 to 2? Let's just go from 0 to 2. So if I go from 0 to 2, I move 1 and 2 units. So that means that the absolute value of 2 equals 2. But what if I asked you for the absolute value of negative 2? What if I want to know the absolute value of negative 2? So of course this is 0. This would be negative 1. And this would be negative 2. So what that is asking you is, how many units do I have to move to get either from 0 to negative 2 or from negative 2 to 0? They're not, notice that the question is not asking in what direction do I move. The question is asking how many times do I move. So if I go from negative 2 to 0, I move 1 and 2 units as well. So what that means is that the absolute value of negative 2 is also 2. So for you guys to understand what I'm trying to say is that it really doesn't matter, or what I'm actually trying to get at, the conclusion I'm trying to get at is that the absolute value of any number will be a positive. It is not possible for an absolute value to equal a negative number. So let's go over the examples in your textbooks on section 1.7. And we're going to go over example number 1. Let me just get myself acclimated here real quick. And the first example says, let me clear the drawings here. The first example says, solve the equation, the absolute value of x minus 5 equals 7. And then they're asking you to graph the solution. Now, like I mentioned in class, I'm not necessarily going to ask you to graph the solution, at least not for equations, but I'm going to show you how to do it to kind of make get the point across to what they're asking you, or how it would be represented. Because when we start working with the absolute value inequalities, those are the ones that we're mainly going to have to graph. So it says graph the solution. Now we're going to see this in the second example, but I want to let you guys know something real quick. Whenever we have an absolute value equation and the answer of that equation is equal to a number greater than 0, that means we're going to have 2 solutions, and we're going to write the same equation 2 times. So because 7 is in fact greater than 0, that means that we are going to write the equation down twice. So the absolute value of x minus 5 is x minus 5. So we're going to say x minus 5 equals positive 7. And the absolute value of x minus 5, which is x minus 5, equals negative 7. So that means that my absolute value inequality is going to have two solutions because the answer was equal to a number greater than 0. So we're going to solve this like we would solve any normal equation. So in this case, I'm going to add 5 here. And this is going to obviously cancel out. So this cancels out here. And that equals 7 plus, give me one sec, guys. There you go. 7 plus 5 is 12. So one answer is going to be x equals 12. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to add 5. Add 5. Add 5 on this side. And this is going to cancel out. And that's going to leave me with x equals negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. So I have two answers. X equals 12, which I did realize I didn't write here, and x equals negative 2. So to graph the solution, it's really simple because we're working with horizontal number lines. So let me see if I can draw the number line here. And the number line, we'll say that this is 0. And we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So 12 would be down here. And on this side, we would say negative 1 and negative 2. So obviously, if I graph my point, this is where negative 2 would be. And this is where positive 12 would be. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what would happen since the original equation equals 7, because it's the absolute value of x minus 5 equals 7. We would see how or what the distance would be, or what number would each point be equal to if I move 7 units. So in the case of where I got negative 2, what I did was I added 5. So I'm going to move 5 units to the right just to see where I would end up. So if I moved, or excuse me, 7, I'm sorry. Because 7 was what I used, I'm going to move 7 units to the right, okay? So again, I just want you to graph the answer. I'm just trying to explain that because these two numbers are solutions of this equation, you move them the same amount of times to the right in this case. We're going to move in the case of negative 2, we're going to move from negative to positive. And in the case of 12, we're going to move to the other side. So anyway, we're going to say 1, 2, 3, right here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is right here. This is where 5 is. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the 12, and I'm going to move 7 spaces to the left. because I want to see if in fact I do end in the same number where the -2 landed. So I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I end up in the same place, which means that -2 and 12 are both correct answers. So this is kind of like a way of checking it graphically, although this is not really a common method used. We're going to see an example 2 and 3 solve how we solve absolute value equations, but we're going to use we're actually going to check our answers using a different method, not this one. So real quick to refresh, if you have an absolute value equation like you have in number 2, it says 5x, or the absolute value of 5x minus 10 equals 45, because the 45 is obviously greater than 0, because we know that 45 is greater than 0. That means that this equation is going to have two answers. So I am going to write them twice, okay? So 45 is greater than 0. That means I'm going to have two answers. And I'm going to say, well, the absolute value of 5x minus 10 is 5x minus 10. So 5x minus 10 equals positive 45. And then we're going to have the other equation, which is 5x minus 10 equals negative 45, okay? So the other equation is 5x minus 10 equals negative 45. So we're going to have two answers, and then we're going to check to see if those two numbers are correct. So we're going to add 10 on this side, and 45 plus 10 equals 55. So this side cancels out, and that would be 5x equals 5x equals 55. So we're going to divide each side by 5, and x is going to be 11, positive 11. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. But here we're going to add 10 again. And negative 45 plus 10. And this is going to cancel out. And that would be 5x equals negative 35. So you're going to divide by 5, which we're going to do in a minute. And that would be negative 7, because negative 35 divided by 5 equals negative 7. So this cancels out. And we're going to say x equals negative 7. So what comes next is to check our answers, which we're going to do in a minute. X equals negative 7. Okay, so what we're going to start doing now is we're going to check our answers to see if in fact these answers are correct. So we got x is positive 11 on one side, and now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to try the other check with x equaling negative 7, okay? So we have our original equation, which is the absolute value of 5x minus 10 equals 45, and we're going to evaluate this equation when x equals negative 7 and when x equals positive 11. So what we're going to do is simply say, well, 5 times 11 minus 10 equals 45. And of course, this is the absolute value. So let me write that here and let me write that there. And this is pretty simple. So 5 times 11 is 55. And then minus 10. Of course, we have the absolute value. And that equals 45. And this would be 55 minus 10, which is 45. And you have the absolute value of 45, which is 45. You just keep bringing this down. And of course, 45 equals 45. So the first answer is true or is correct. Now we're going to try the same thing, but with negative 7. So we simply say, well, 5 times negative 7 minus 10 equals 45. And of course, all this is in the first or the left hand side is all in the absolute value parentheses. So this is really not that hard. It's kind of repetitive. So this would be negative 35 minus 10. And remember that when you're subtracting a negative number and a positive number, you're actually adding the opposite. So that would be negative. This would be the same thing as saying negative 35 plus negative 10, which equals negative 45. Again, whenever you're subtracting a positive and a negative, you're adding the opposite. So what that means is I'm going to add the opposite of 10, which is negative 10. And this is going to be negative 45. So I have the absolute value of negative 45. And of course, the absolute value of negative 45 is 45 because there cannot be a negative answer. And negative 45 and equals 45, and of course 45 equals 45. So that means that this answer, the both answers that I got for the absolute value equation are correct. Now we're going to see example 3 in a minute, which is basically solving absolute value equations with two variables or variables on both sides. So let's actually let's do that one. It says the absolute value of 2x plus 12. So let me clear all my images here. You can pause and kind of rewind it if you need any extra help. So it'd be the absolute value of 2x plus 12 equals 4x. So extraneous solutions. What an extraneous solution pretty much is a solution that cannot possibly make um, that absolute value equation true. So I'm actually going to read from your book. It says extraneous solutions. When you solve an absolute value equation, it is possible for a solution to be extraneous. An extraneous solution is an apparent solution that must be rejected because it does not satisfy the original equation. So basically, an answer that just doesn't make this true. So we have 4x. Now, because the 4x is positive and not negative, in spite of the fact that we don't know the value of x, because the 4 is positive and it's greater than 0, we're going to write the equation 2 times. So we're going to say the absolute value of 2x plus 12, which is 2x plus 12. So 2x plus 12 equals 4x. And then on the other side, we're going to have the same equation, but it's going to be equal to negative 4x. Okay, so on this side, we're going to write 2x plus 12 equals negative 4x. So what you're going to do is the same thing. Solve an equation with variables on both sides. I always want to keep my equations positive, so I'm actually going to subtract 2x. And, your book, they do the check, and they do the entire process. Sometimes when you're looking for an extraneous solution, you do not need to complete the check because you know that the answer is not going to work. Remember that an absolute value can never be negative. So that's always a good indicator whether one answer is extraneous or not. Anyway, what I did here was I subtracted 2x to keep my variables positive, and this is going to cancel out. And I'm going to have 12 equaling 2x because 4 minus 2 is 2. And then I'm just going to divide by 2 on both sides. So 2x divide by 2. And this is going to cancel out. And 12 divided by 6 is, or 12 divided by 2 is 6. So one answer is going to be positive 6. So 6 equals x. Or you could actually write x equals 6. It really doesn't make a difference. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. So here, the 2x is negative, 4x is negative, I'm sorry. So we're going to subtract 2x. That stays the same. We subtract 2x on both sides. So again, minus 2x here. And this side is going to cancel out. And that leaves me with 12. And negative 4x minus 2x. Remember, it's the same thing as saying negative 4x plus negative 2x. And this would be negative 6x. And we're going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. And this is going to cancel out, of course, and that's going to give me the value of x. And 12 divided by negative 6 is negative 2. So negative 2 equals x. And now all we're going to do is check our answers to make sure that everything is correct. So we're going to check this out real quick. And I'm actually going to go ahead and erase the board. So we set one side x equals positive 6 and the other side x equals negative 2. So I'm going to erase this. Let me just erase this side here. It's going to cancel out anyway. So we're going to solve our equations, and we're going to say the absolute value of 2 times 6 plus 12 and equals 4 times 6, which is 24. But let me show you what I'm doing. So all this is going to equal to 24. So 4 times 6 is 24. And of course, 2 times 6 is 12. So this is going to be the absolute value of 12. Remember, this is the absolute value of 2 times 6. And 2 times 6 is 12. So 12 plus 12, or the absolute value of 12 plus 12, equals 24. And 12 plus 12 is 24. And the absolute value of 24 equals 24. So 24 equals 24. And that first part is correct. Now we're going to do the same thing, but instead of saying 6, we're going to use the other answer that we got, which was negative 2. So we're going to say the absolute value of 2 times negative 2 plus 12 plus 12 equals 4 or negative 4 times negative 2 . So negative 4 times negative 2 is going to be negative 8. So this is going to be equal to negative 8. Negative 8. Sorry for that. And obviously on this side, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And we would have negative 4 plus 12. And we would get the absolute value of that. Now here, we're seeing that this answer is not going to be correct because negative 4 plus 12 is negative 8. And the absolute value of negative 8 is positive 8. And positive 8 is not equal to negative 8, okay? Sorry for that 8. It looks like it has like a wing coming out of it, so I'll fix that now. Negative 8 negative 8. So give me 1 sec, guys. Let's see if I can erase that and rewrite it again. The absolute value of negative 8 is positive 8. And of course, positive 8. What is wrong with these 8s today? They just don't want to come out for me. Hopefully you're getting the drift. And here's my marker. Okay, so again, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. Positive 8. There you go. Yay. And then positive 8 is not equal to negative 8. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is not an answer. And that is an extraneous answer, which means an answer that does not satisfy or make true the first inequality equation. So guys, this is the first 3 examples. of section 1.7. Hopefully this video lesson is helpful, and we will see each other in our next class. So stay safe and bye-bye.